Happy day 9 of 30 days of me. Today we're talking about persistence and what that's like when you have a lot of trauma in your past. For me, I remember vividly a time when I was a younger girl, well, really from about the time I was 8-ish up until maybe 25, that I was super persistent, and I enjoyed the feeling of persistence. When I was 8, I used to keep a journal every day. I had journals for 8 years that I kept. I very rarely skipped a day. I have just stacks and stacks of journals from when I was a little girl. I used to work out starting when I was about 10 or 11. I would work out every day. I used to work in the garden with my dad. We were homeschooled, so I would cultivate gardens and have, that's a persistent thing to get food to grow. So I would be out there watering and fertilizing and weeding, and we were homeschooled too. And we did a lot of self-homeschooling by the time I was about in 6th grade or so. So I remember consistently doing my homework and doing my work without being asked, and I was known for that too in my family. It's like, oh yeah, Addie, she's super responsible. And so when I started to lose my persistence, which I took forward into high school and my 1 year of college classes that I did before I got married, and then into a lot of my health battles and things like that, when I started to lose the ability to be persistent, or I won't say lose the ability, when I started to lose the ease of persistence, it was very noticeable and it was scary. And a lot of times you'll hear people tell a trauma survivor, well, just keep going. And that always frustrates me, because usually they have been continuing to go and kept going. And maybe they were doing the things that needed to be done. Maybe they were doing something that they thought needed to be done that wasn't getting them in the proper direction. But usually they have been in some way, shape, or form persistent at some period for a length of time. And then more traumas happened, more events, more terrible situations. And eventually, your brain is learning from that years and years and years of trying and then not getting safe, not reaching a place of ease, that it doesn't work. And also there's some other things that go on in the brain, but all of this is the culmination of the long term with complex trauma. It's long-term damage that's happening. And so I think it's super important for people to understand, when you do see someone who's been through adversity having persistence, it's a very different level of what I used to do. For persistence in the past, it was wake up, do this, do that, blah, blah, routine, boom, 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 done. Great, I achieved my persistence of goals for the day. It's a whole nother level when there's like the fog feeling and the easy distraction, easy distractibility, and the brain working against itself to try to protect itself from what it now sees as a totally unsafe world. And so I think it's super important for this message to come out there. And there's places like the Arizona Trauma Institute who teach lay people and organizations and systems what it means for a trauma survivor's brain, the actual workings on the inside, to try to be persistent or to achieve goals. And so it's beautiful that this work is starting to come out, because it's so important that we understand that while on the outside a trauma survivor looks the same as a lot of us, the workings of what's going on in here are not the same. So that's what I wanted to share today, and a couple tips for what I do to be persistent are well, on days that it doesn't work out for whatever reason, I have had to learn not to self-crucify, where I used to be very hard on myself, call myself terrible names. So that has stopped, or almost completely stopped. Some days I'll still hear myself, and then I'll, say, no, you did an amazing job for what all you've been through. You're like an Olympic medalist at this point for what you've been through and where you are now. So do not talk to me like that. I'll tell myself, do not talk to me like that. And then also really setting hard boundaries with other people about what I am and am not able to do. So someone wants to have a meeting on a certain day and I already have 2 meetings scheduled. That's my limit for a day. No, that is not going to work for me. Let's choose another day. And it's interesting too, because when you work at home, people sometimes think that you're not doing much. And in the first couple of years of your business, if you're a business owner, you will know that of course it's a grind, an intensive, dedicated, determination grind for the first few years. So in any case, that's a little side topic for another day, but just being able to, you know, those tips are that be easy on yourself if you do miss, you know, a persistence in your day, or if you miss your jog or your exercise or your meditation or whatever other recommendation your therapist has made. If you miss it, it's okay. Do it again tomorrow. And even if you miss 2 days, it's all about getting back up and doing it, but allowing those days of where things just aren't working. So, and then of course, being open and setting those boundaries so that you don't overbook yourself, to make it so that you don't have the time to do your persistent practices. Because that was another thing, like I said, if I overbook, if I have more than 2 meetings in a day, the emotional drain is very intense. As I've talked about in another video, when you've been through trauma, trying to communicate with people who don't understand is like almost speaking another language, because you're constantly thinking for them and ahead of them and telling yourself, oh, it's not, they didn't mean that, or, you know, you're regulating yourself. It's an intense experience. So setting that boundary of no more than 2 meetings in a day is important. Or for me, it's 2 meetings, whatever that is for you, find that and stick to it. Because if I get too overwhelmed, then I don't have the energy to do those routines and practices that I've so carefully worked towards all these years. So those are my tips for today, actionable tips. And I thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Share or subscribe or comment. These are all things that are really helpful to other people so that they can see these videos in their feeds. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on my website at adrianruan.com. Have a beautiful day.